So I've made a few videos that have displayed the iPad connected to an external monitor and some of how I do that, but I've never really done a dedicated iPad desk setup video. That's what this is gonna be. I'm gonna show you guys some of the best practices to use when having an iPad be the anchor of your desk setup. I'm trying out a new camera angle for this video, so instead of a top-down shot, I'm gonna have this camera right here showing off the external monitor screen, because one of the downsides with an external monitor on the iPad is, let's say I wanna go and screen record this, which I do, so screen record, but this is not going to screen record the upper screen at all. So if I stop this screen recording, you can see that the only video it created was from the actual iPad screen. It didn't save anything with this screen here. So the only way for me to show it on camera is actually have a camera point at the screen. All right, so let's talk about stands. You're gonna need some way to set your iPad on the desk and make it practical and usable alongside your external monitor or keyboard and mouse or whatever you're using in this setup. So my first suggestion is, hey, if you have the Magic Keyboard, leaving it in the Magic Keyboard might be the right move for you. It is a great all-in-one solution, super portable. You can literally just have one cord going to the iPad, connecting it to your external monitor, and now you already have a keyboard and a trackpad right here. You don't even need any other peripherals if you don't want them. Also, with a new Magic Keyboard here, it does have some pretty good flexibility as far as angles. It can be straight up and down. It can go as far back as here, which is plenty for most things. So leaving the Magic Keyboard, I've done this many times. I probably will still continue to do this many times, but it is not the only method I've used, and it's not even necessarily my favorite. However, I will say, if you don't have some kind of Thunderbolt dock like I have right here that everything else is connected to, having a Magic Keyboard here is actually a huge plus, because then you have this extra charging port to actually use on the device, because an external monitor is just going to drain your battery even faster, so you're going to want some kind of power coming to the device basically constantly. I also recommend this even higher if you have the 13-inch iPad Pro. That Magic Keyboard is full size and the trackpad's even bigger. You're basically getting everything you need all right there. So don't underestimate the Magic Keyboard as your stand for your desk setup. Next, we're going to look at this metal stand that's really collapsible and portable. This is a great stand that looks fantastic on a desk, but also can fold up and be a great travel companion to keep your iPad propped up and stuff, especially if you don't have a Magic Keyboard. You can find these things for like 20 bucks on Amazon. I'll have one linked in the description below. But yeah, this is a nice option to have. So let me just take off the Magic Keyboard here, set out this lovely stand, and set the iPad right on top. This gives it some pretty flexible angles. You can basically go flat with it. It just starts to get a little unstable there. You can bring it down to like a drawing angle too, if you want to start drawing on your iPad while it's in a stand. So very solid option. A benefit of a stand like this too is that it is not iPad specific. If you upgrade your iPad down the road, or you have two different size iPads, this is not going to be specific to one or the other. And that's an underrated feature. I mean, I bought this stand when I had a much older iPad Pro, I think like a 2020 iPad Pro or 2018 iPad Pro even. So I've had this for years and years and years, and it has never failed me. And it works with my latest and greatest iPad Pro. It's kind of one of those things where you just buy it once and you don't have to worry about a stand for your iPad ever again. While I'm on the metal stands, they make these magnetic stands for your iPads now. I did have one for a 12.9-inch M2 iPad Pro, and it was nice, but it's way less compact when it folds up because it's got this big metal magnetic back to it to hold the iPad. And again, it only worked for the one kind of iPad. And when the M4 generation came, Even the 13-inch didn't fit that style because they moved around the magnet. So you never know when Apple's going to update the magnet structure and stuff like that. So you have no idea how much longevity those iPad stands will actually have. So they're really neat if you can afford them. They're kind of on the pricier side. So personally, I would just go with those simpler metal stands. You can still have it stand up in portrait mode too. There's no reason you can't do it on that one. So unless you really need the rotation or like an armature that it's on, then I can see the magnetic ones being useful. But besides that, the non-magnetic stands are more than enough and they're gonna last you way longer. And then lastly, I go with some kind of case that has a elevated floating mode or some more dynamic angles or stuff like that. This is the dynamic folio from Moft. I personally have been loving using this as part of my desk setup. Just snap it right on there. Here you go. Gives you a good amount of elevation, about the same as that metal stand I showed, and just some nice pleasing angles. Obviously, it's a little less customizable as far as incremental angles, but this still has a lot, including a way to display it in portrait mode. I mean, I could set this up right next to the monitor here. Obviously, I'd have to figure out a better place for this cord, but I could easily have some setups like that going on, or a nice angle like that, especially under a monitor. This could be a really nice position for you. So I highly recommend this case. I made a whole video on this case, so I'm not going to spend too much more time on it, but Moft also makes the float folio, which gives you even more height on the case. So I recommend checking that out. There's also many other cases that give incremental angles, so that's nice too. I recommend if you do go the case route though, get something that has a little bit of elevation to it, especially if you want this ever next to like a laptop or something. You want those screens to be relatively in line with each other, and this definitely will do that. But obviously we're focusing on its desk setup capabilities. So next step is the good keyboard and a good mouse or trackpad. And these are what I use more consistently with my iPad here. I use the Magic Trackpad because trackpads just work better on iPad OS. The way the mouse cursor even is just is not great and optimized for mice. It works, it's just clearly intended for use with a trackpad. It's very gesture based, just like Mac OS, but even more so, heavily relying on gestures. I mean, when you're in an app, you don't really even have a way to get out of it without swiping out. Or you can use keyboard shortcuts. I don't want to say you can't do that. So you can do Command Home to get out of an app. You can do Command Tab and switch between apps that you have open. So there is ways to get around it, and you definitely can make a mouse work. I just find getting the Magic Trackpad from Apple just tends to make the experience even better, especially if you're not using the Magic Keyboard. And then the reason I have this Logitech keyboard is just because I've had it for a while and it can pair to 3 different devices. So I can have it connected to my iPad, my MacBook, maybe my iPad mini as well, or something like that. Just some more flexibility there. And I like the slightly more mechanical keys here. I am nowhere near a keyboard snob, so any of you out there probably look at this Logitech keyboard and feel disgusted that I would even call this a good mechanical keyboard. But I like it. It's good enough for me and for my mechanical keyboard needs. And just for an example, here is the Logitech MX Anywhere 3 mouse. So not like the top of the line mouse by any means, but a good portable one. We're gonna go to Safari, we're gonna go to apple.com. As you can see, the scrolling just looks a little weird and kind of unresponsive, and then it will go fast at times. And part of that is these magnetic mouse wheels I don't think work the greatest with Apple software at this point on the iPad. Yeah, so it just kind of gets jumpy at certain points and then slow at others. And yeah, it's just a little weird. This is me trying to make it free flow through the whole document there. It's just kind of choppy. And then this in turn is just scrolling with the trackpad. Very, very smooth, because iPadOS is optimized for touch input, and trackpads mimic fingers much more so than an actual mouse scroll wheel does. So yes, the Magic Mouse also works great here if you dare use the Magic Mouse. I won't. So I like to be able to use my devices while they're charging if possible. Yeah, I don't think I would do that. I think I'd rather have this trackpad and a mouse than just the Magic Mouse. Let me know in the comments down below if you actually like using the Magic Mouse. And same thing with the Magic Keyboard that Apple sells for their Mac. Any Apple first-party keyboard accessories just seem like they're optimized a bit better. There's occasionally a time where there's a bit more of a delay with the Logitech keyboard, or occasionally a time where a certain key command doesn't do what I think it's going to do. So it's rare, but it happens. This particular Logitech keyboard is optimized for macOS pretty well, so it has very few issues, but it does have some. And that's another point. Anything optimized for macOS is usually optimized for iPadOS. Sometimes they'll actually say iPadOS too. So yeah, if you can find things that are properly optimized, they're gonna be even better. But in theory, any keyboard and mouse will pair and work just fine. These are just some of the things that I've used and I know work well with my iPad. And then it's a very similar story with the external monitor. Obviously, I haven't been using it a whole lot in this video. It's been paired the whole time. I've been using it to look at my cameras, and sometimes I'll bring in my notes as well for the video and put those all up there. But as you can see, this is about as far as I can stretch the Final Cut Pro window in Stage Manager for the external monitor. So I don't really understand why they limit some of the apps like this, especially with this being a first-party app. It makes no sense to me. Also, fun fact, I accidentally stopped my recording, had to restart it quick, because if you ever exit out of this window or even click onto a different window first, it ends the recording on Final Cut Pro. Just be aware if you use this live multicam feature in any way similar to how I use it. You probably won't be if you're looking at this video, but if you do, be aware of that. There's a lot of stuff like that on iPadOS. It doesn't really handle doing two different things at once very well. And for some people, that's great. Some people can only focus on one task at a time, so the fact that the software limits you to that is actually okay, and they're fine with that. And sometimes I'm that person. Sometimes I really just need to focus in on one thing, and I don't want 50 million tasks opened at the same time and crazy multitasking. I just want to focus on editing a video or whatever. And then it's fine. But then it's like, okay, I'm exporting the video, but you can't dare think about going away from the screen while it's exporting to maybe make a thumbnail or something, because it will cancel the export. Now, you can have something going on this screen, like you see now, and something completely different going on the other screen, like 3D modeling. Oh, by the way, this is a really crappy model that ChatGPT made for me. If you want to know about ChatGPT's modeling skills, including this cat model, check out my YouTube short on that. It was very eye-opening on its abilities. But on a different note, here's like the pen loop I made for the Supernote Manta. And I could be modeling this while recording a video or having Final Cut Pro open or watching some content, but you can't have two audio sources playing at the same time. You can't be editing your timeline, like playing and stopping it, and then also having music playing. You can't do that at all on the iPad. You can't have a YouTube video playing in the background while you're editing the video. It will stop one to play the other. Really frustrating, actually, at certain points. This is why I made a whole video on why the iPad is no longer my only computer, but there is still times I rock an iPad desk setup. But the beauty of the way I have things set up through this Thunderbolt dock right here, which I highly recommend something like this, I can just unplug this single cable here, plug in my MacBook Pro, and now all my peripherals, everything is connected to my MacBook Pro. You also should just be aware that the more optimized your external monitor is for Mac OS, the better it usually works with iPad OS. For example, this 4K monitor here, I don't know if you can see by some of the apps and stuff, it's just not the most high resolution looking. I mean, they look way more vibrant right here in the iPad than even right there on the external monitor. And part of that is just the screen brightness of the iPad and things like that. But I've just noticed in general, it just seems like the colors are just a little bit wonky here. I mean, here's a thumbnail I made. I don't know. It just doesn't look quite as good as it should for being a 4K monitor. But that's the same case for macOS. The Mac doesn't pair super well with this monitor either. It's not really made for macOS at all. Whereas I have a different monitor at home that works even better with my MacBooks. It's only 2K, but it looks great with the iPads and the Macs. So just know if it works for Mac, it probably works for iPad. The Studio display I hear works awesome with the iPad, and that makes sense. Apple's first-party products will always work better, but for those not wanting to spend $1,500 on a 27-inch monitor that's still at 60 hertz, then we're stuck with finding a different monitor that works. But hey, that's the basics of having a great iPad desk setup. Another fundamental is, having a desk. So if you're curious about the desk that I have here and some of the lighting equipment and setup I have, that's all gonna be linked in the description down below. I'll also link a video to the review that I made on this desk itself. Obviously, if this was not my studio, I would have changed a couple things. I would have had this monitor a bit more centered. You wouldn't see this giant pole right here. I probably also would have put this dock more underneath the shelf and routed some of these cables a little bit differently. But this way I can kind of usually push them off to the side and out of view of my normal camera angles. You're seeing a little bit of it through this camera angle here. But yeah, overall, I would have had some things different. But this is a great way to set up your iPad to get some real work done using a mouse, especially a trackpad works great. This keyboard. I also think that something important is that you want a setup that is easy to get up and running, but also pretty easy to take down. Like this one, all I have to do is unplug the iPad and fold up my case. And I'm good to go. I'm going to take it with me because you don't want your iPad tied down to a desk. That's not what the goal is here. And I also like having on my desk some kind of Apple Pencil holder. So that way the pencil is not drawing power constantly from the iPad. Another thing you're going to want to do is probably set this 80% limit if you're going to keep it plugged in on power as your main desk setup a lot. It's just going to keep your battery capacity, your maximum capacity here, much higher, much longer. My iPad's getting close to a year old now, and it's still at 99% capacity. That's pretty stinking good considering how much I've been using it. And for 8 months of using it, it was my only computer. And that's mostly because during that time period, I had the 80% limit on almost constantly. Anyway, guys, this is the iPad desk setup. Hopefully this gave you a pretty good idea on how to do this for yourself. And of course, if you have any questions, please comment down below. Any questions for your setup, or if I didn't mention a piece of equipment, I think I've pretty much covered everything here. But if I didn't mention something and you want to know about it, please let me know, all in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It really does help me out. By the time this video is posted, this channel is officially a whole year old. That is crazy. So much has changed in the last year in my life, and this channel has grown so much. I challenge you all to watch my very first video after this one. Watch it and comment below on that video if you think my quality has improved and by how much. And if you missed anything that I used to do when I started this channel. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. And as always, have a great rest of your day.